In this video, we are going to do a top-to-bottom tutorial on ProPresenter 7. This is an in-depth tutorial on how we at Journey Church are going to use ProPresenter 7 and the various features that work for us. There are certainly other bells and whistles that ProPresenter 7 has that we're not going to go over because we're not currently using those. Certainly if we implement them, we may have a subsequent video for that feature. But for right now, this is an in-depth tutorial on how to create, edit, adjust, link, and set everything that we need for a typical weekend. And so we're going to start to finish all of that. The first thing we're going to start with, of course, is the new design of ProPresenter 7 and the layout. So it's a little bit familiar and a little bit new. So on the left sidebar here, we have where we begin. So we've got the song library, we've got the playlists, and then below that are all the items in the thing we have clicked on up here. So if I click on Song Library, I have the entire Song Library visual happening down here. If I click on a playlist, then I just see the elements from that playlist. Of course, the big window here is what the user will use to navigate through whatever is in the playlist selected on the left. So if I want to jump to something, I can certainly click that in here. And then in the song library, if I'm looking at that, I can click through that as well. I'm going to go back to the playlist here. So when we're in this is kind of a continuous scroll here of all of the slides and elements for a weekend. And then on the right is sort of the output window. So when we've got lyrics going on, we'll see what we're sending to the main output right here. In this case, we do have audience and stage turned on. And then these are our clear buttons. So before, when we had to just make sure everything was gone, we could clear that. If there were... for instance, let me show you here. So if there was, for instance, a slide up, that's going to be a slide here, but then there might be a message popped on top of that or something like that happening, or a prop, which we're not actually using any of those, but I could turn one on just for fun. And all of these elements I could turn off individually, or I could clear all. So I just want to show you that. Also, fun fact and feature that I do absolutely love about ProPresenter 7 is where it says Decklink 1 main, I can drop that down and see all three of our stage outputs. There's audience and stage outputs. So the first two are the audience outputs. Those are things that the audience sees. The stage output, in our case, is just the one stage display, but we could certainly hook up more and get more outputs there. So main is the main output that we're all used to seeing. Center is a reformatted version of the lyrics for our center screen. And then the stage output is the stage display. So if you're here in person looking at this and you have the multi-viewer up and the video system on, you'd be able to actually see all three of these outputs at one time on the left multi-viewer. But you can also see exactly what they're doing for setup purposes on this display. So I could change stage display and make sure that as I click through the different documents, that each one is correctly changing to the stage display we need for that document. Below that, we've got the ability to control different things. So I want to show you on a video. As we play this video, this is now the timeline of that video, so we can see exactly how long is left. We can advance it forward or backward by 15 seconds. We can certainly pause it. And my favorite new feature, go to the last 30 seconds. This is great for long videos we've already tested, but we can jump to the end to check that transition. And then, of course, a advanced timer here to see when that go to next is going to expire, which is 0 seconds after the video ends, and then it jumps to that last video. So that's a great way to see that. This bottom section about audio, we're going to completely ignore that. We are not using that feature. I do want to show this little filter window down at the bottom. This is kind of helpful when you're in the library because that is a big long list. So if you wanted to, for instance, go to search for something, you can. It is text specific, so you do need to have exactly what is in there to see that. So if I want sermon, I could just search for the word sermon, sermon, but I can't do SPK sermon because it's actually SPK space dash space sermon. So most of the times you're just searching sermon, and there you go. And that's that. So that's how you can search the library in this window. But I'm going to show you how they've implemented searching the library for linking inside of a playlist. It's way faster, way better. I'll show you that in a minute. As far as finishing the tutorial here, on the top row, top toolbar, we've got a bunch of different things. First off is the giant search for the library. So this will search anything in the library. So of course I can search sermon just like I was doing before, and we'd be able to see that. I can double click any of those elements and it'll go straight to that item in the library. But if I want to see that element in the context of the playlist, of course I would just click it in the playlist. Text is when you're adjusting typeface inside of a slide. You can adjust globally some of those settings there. For the most part, we won't need to worry about that. Themes, these are what used to be called templates in ProPresenter 6. So themes are now the old templates, and so we've added a couple little things. We've tweaked these for what we need in this new day and age with ProPresenter 7, but these are the templates that we'll be using. They're just called themes now. You can, for the most part, you won't be using text or theme up here. We'll be facilitating that in a different way. This next set of tabs here, super helpful, and it's now how you change the view of ProPresenter. In show mode, you're in the mode in which you show things to people. So I can click on slides, I can click on videos, I can do all of that, and it's all just there as the playlist lines out. Edit view is like if I wanted to go in and edit the welcome and offering intro, I could click on a slide there and hit edit, or I could also right click and hit edit on a slide. So I could right click edit, that brings me into that edit tab, and now I've got the slides on the left, I've got my big canvas in the center, and my features and stuff on the right side. And I'm going to have a whole section about editing later, so we're going to go into that more in depth later. Reflow is not something that we're going to use, but you could go in and reflow the text if we wanted to. Most of the time you're doing that in the edit window. Bible, this is a feature we're not currently using, but we could use this to create slides based on certain scriptures and stuff. It's just a feature we're not using. And then under more is all of the other fun editors that exist. For the most part, we're going to ignore the bottom three of CCLI, props, and masks, and just focus on stage and themes. The stage editor is how we edit the stage display looks that we have. For the most part, we've got all of the stage display looks you should need available and created already, but if you wanted to create a new one, you would go in here, you would create a new slide, and then go to town editing it. Most of the time, like recently, I created the sermon with PCO and interview with PCO. I just duplicated the sermon, called it the interview, and then changed my timer here from the sermon timer to the interview timer. But certainly if any of these things needed to get adjusted, like we wanted to add something or remove something, this stage editor is where we would be doing that editing. The theme editor is where we adjust the themes for different things. So for instance, if I wanted to create a new message template, scripture template, I could go in and edit it from there. I can also go into themes, scripture in lower thirds, and hit edit. That's the same thing as clicking up here, going to the theme editor, and choosing your theme here. So if I wanted to say, let's say we've got a new sermon series, I might select all three of these slides and duplicate them, and then go in and change their names and change their colors and formats and things like that. But again, we're going to do editing a little bit more in depth here in a minute. All right, last but not least is the center section of the ProPresenter toolbar, and that is timers, messages, props, and stage. Timers are basically all of the clocks we use. We do use the countdown to 9 a.m. pre-show, the countdown to 11 a.m. pre-show. We are not currently using the 4-minute timer, but that's just another timer we can have. The sermon 30 or the timer 30 minutes is actually the sermon timer here. And then timer miscellaneous is what I'm using this weekend for the interview. And GLS timer, I just have other timers for other things. This list will probably change a lot. We'll use different timers for different elements that we need clocks for. So for instance, this week, the 30-minute timer is actually set to 25 minutes because that's how long we're giving for the sermon and prayer time now. Messages is something that we're not currently going to use in CG1's ProPresenter, but it will appear in other computers and timers. So we'll have things like parent calls and countdown timers for the service and things like that happening on other computers. And this works similarly to how it did in ProPresenter 6. You put your token in here with what you want the timer to actually link to. You set up what theme you want the message to look like, and then you can adjust some of those things. So for instance, parent calls, we can edit the text of what appears inside the orange box, and that is the room token. So no matter which one we click on, it's just the same token for both of those. We just have two different formats for each of those. The props layer, we're not going to worry about that. The stage layer is a quick way to do two different things. So we could we could change it to sermon and say, you are out of time. And then we could show that. But this specific theme doesn't have the message in it. So we could go to something like not laying clock with message and say, you are out of time, and get the person off the stage. But then we could switch it back to sermon and have that going for them. So we're going to clear that. So that is the stage, the messages and timers there. Again, we're not going to worry about store or media over here on the right. That is a basic overview of the new ProPresenter 7 layout. Next, let's talk about creating a weekend playlist.